Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to provide the answer of the weekly challenge which I have posted this week. In case you were able to successfully complete the challenge and you have shared me the answer, congratulations for adding something on your skill. In case you were not able to complete the solution and you are still looking for the answer, you are in the correct video. In this video, I am going to code this problem statement in a step-by-step manner. So, in case you are struggling, you can watch this video and you will get the solution for the problem statement. As an RPA developer, we all might have different approaches for solving a problem. So, one problem can be solved with multiple different ways. So, in case you feel that yes, there might be a better way or it can be solved alternatively, you can also comment the same in this video and I would be happy to address that and would amplify that post as well, right? So it's all about sharing the feedback and learning together. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next videos in this series. So in this video, I am going to give you the solution for the challenge TBMK0003, also known as the Vendor Data Mastery Challenge. First of all, thank you so much for your active participation and submitting the solutions. Today, in this video, I am going to show you two of the solutions. The first solution would be where I would be coding this complete problem statement in a step-by-step manner, where I would start from creating the login flow, handling the various login scenarios. Then we go to the Acme portal, we download the vendors, we'll see how you can get all these data, how do you write it to the Excel, how do you do the calculation, write the total back, all of that in a step-by-step manner so you understand the core logic. The second solution which I would share is that how you can implement and how one of the subscriber have implemented this in a robotics enterprise framework. That solution I am also going to show you guys, right? So in case you're looking for the solution, this is the correct video. So this was the problem statement. I would just skim through the problem statement because we have already discussed this in detail in the problem statement video. In case you are directly looking to the solution, so I would request you guys to watch the problem statement, then only you would understand the solution video. Okay, so the problem statement video is available in the description. In the high level, we have to go to a portal which is called acmetest.com. We have to go to vendors, then we go to vendor inventory. We get all the codes which are available in the vendor. We have to loop through all the vendors, get the inventory, extract the information, put it in an Excel, and also we have to do some of the calculations, right? And finally, we have to prepare a final Excel which having the all the sum for each of these individual vendors. Also, we have to make sure that we log in properly, we log out properly. All of this is the problem statement which we have already discussed, right? So this was the problem statement. Let's talk about the solution now. Quick announcement, we will be announcing the winners for this weekly challenge on Monday, and on Monday you will get a new problem statement to solve. Also, in case you are liking these videos, you are liking this challenge series, I would appreciate your feedback on these weekly challenges. Please comment your feedback, like this video, share it to your friends. That way YouTube will know that yes, people are liking this channel, and that will amplify my channel to the more audiences, which internally helping me to grow my YouTube channel, right? So please do comment your feedback on this video series. Having said that, let's get started. Okay, so this would be our website where we are actually going to write the automation, which is called acmetest.uipath.com. Okay, and this is the website where we are going to test and write today's code. First thing first, in case you do not have an account on the Acme website, go to this website, acmetest-login. I'll provide this link in the description. Just click on this link and click on this button which says register and provide your details, and you should have an account. Okay, now whenever we talk about logging into an application, there can be multiple scenarios, right? The first scenario is a happy path, which I call this one, right? This is called a happy path, where you open in a plain sequence, right? you provide the username, you provide the password, and you just log in, right? So I'll call this one as first scenario. I'll call this as happy path, where you have a username, okay, you have a password, and you log in, right? Something like this. The robot provides the username, password, and you click on this button and it is successfully logged in. Okay, so this is one scenario. The second scenario might happen is that as soon as the robot browse this URL, okay, the welcome, or I would say the login screen is not coming, and directly the welcome screen is coming. That means in this place you don't need to log in again, right? So the second scenario here is to check if it is already logged in, right? If it is already logged in, then you won't get this screen username, password, login, and then you will get an exception, right? So this is the second scenario which can happen. The third scenario could be you are in the login screen and the password which are given to you in orchestrator assets is incorrect, and when you click on login, it does not match the records, right? So then you have a third scenario which says that the credential do not match the records, right? Then this is the third scenario which you have to take care of. And the last scenario could be that your username is correct, your password is correct, but when you click on this login button, it is not going inside, right? It is not going to the correct page. You do not get this error, which this does not mean that I am successfully logged in, right? There can be other reasons, the portal may be down or anything, right? So I would call this as a successful login, right? So what should be the scenario for a successful login? So these are the 4 scenarios which we have to do, and we have to see that how we can write an login mechanism which take care of all these 4 things. And mostly whenever you have this scenario, this would be nothing but a business exception, right? If everything works well, then only I should proceed to the next pieces of automation, right? We have already written in the classic. Today we are going to see this same automation in modern design, right? Let's go to the UiPath Studio and write this automation in the modern design now. So I'll go here, I'll create a new sequence, okay? I'll call this sequence as login to 𝐒𝐞𝐚. I'll go here and I'll say create. Okay, so my sequence is ready. So the first thing first, best practice, always include one activity which is called log message. When I go here and I'll say it is info level log, right? Because when you run it in an unattended mode, you should know, right, that what is happening to the automation. So I'll simply go here and I'll say that login flow started. Okay, so login flow will start here, right? Now to log in to the 𝐒𝐞𝐚, the first thing which we need to do in this automation is to log into this website, and this website is opening in a browser. So the first thing would be to open this website which is in a browser. You can use any browser. I prefer to use the Edge browser, right? Now in the modern design, we have to use an activity which is called use application / browser. Drag and drop it here, okay? And now this is asking me indicate the application to automate, which application you want to automate. So I will say that yes, I want to automate. I'll just point it to the 𝐒𝐞𝐚 like this, right? And the beauty of modern folders, it will automatically take majority of the details for you, including the URL, browser, and everything, right? One benefit of using the modern activities, right? One more thing to notice here is that as of now I have hard coded the stuffs, but when you are really doing the automation, you should use the robotics enterprise framework, the configs, the assets to make this thing configurable, right? But the agenda here is to complete the use case with modern activities, hence I am keeping this as hard coded. Okay, so once you have opened this web page, what is the next thing? The next thing is you have to type the email, you have to type the password here, and then you have to click on this button which is login. Okay, Now to type the password or the username, you have an activity which is called type, and you would notice that in the UI automation application you have something which is called type into. I'll drag and drop it inside here, and now this is the modern type into. Okay, I'll indicate it on the screen and I'll point it to this button which says email. Okay, and now here it has given me the fuzzy selector, strict selector, image, everything it has given me, and this looks good to me because it is uniquely able to identify the elements. And I'll just say confirm, right? No changes, I trust the modern activities. Okay, now the next one is I want to type a secure text. In the classic design, you have a single activity, you have a different activity, however, which was called type secure text, right? But in the modern design, the same activity which is called type into can actually do the same thing. Type the username and type the password as well, right? So for the first one where it says type to email, the second one I'll point it again and I'll point it to this guy which is called the password. You just have to wait for the modern activities to load and then say confirm. Okay, now how do you decide whether this password is a secure or not? You just click on this button and that makes this as the secure string, right? So in the classic design, you have two separate activities. One is type into and the other is the type secure text. However, in the modern activities, it is just a matter of click to change from standard to secure. Okay. Now the question arises, where do I have this username and the password, right? So username, password should be always stored in assets, right? So I'll go to the data manager and here I have stored all my credentials, right? So we are doing the Acme automation. So I'll go here and I'll take this guy which is called Acme credentials, drag and drop it here. And I'm going to use something which is called get asset. Okay, how do I get this? I simply went to my orchestrator and I created an asset and I put my username and the password there, right? In case you don't understand assets, we have a dedicated video explaining the how do you get and read these assets, right? So we have the assets now, and once we read the assets, if I go to the properties, right, it is going to okay, sorry, I have taken the wrong activity, guys. It would be not get asset, it would be get credential, right? I'll delete this. I'll again go to the data manager, drag and drop this activity here from data manager, again a new feature, and I want to use the get credential, right? Because I want to get the username and the password. Okay, and now if I go to the properties, you would see that I am getting username and the password. Now with this new update, you guys do not need to create variable. Okay, so if I want to pass the value from here to here, I can simply open this email activity. It is asking me what do you want to type. So I'll click on this button which is the plus button. I'll say use variable and I'll say that use the get credential username. Double click and it will automatically create the variable for me from here to here. Easy, right? If I go to the password, secure string, click on this plus button, use the variable, get credential, password. And now if I go to the variables, you would notice that both these variables are created automatically by UiPath. One is string and the other is secure string, right? Very good feature of 2023 version of UiPath. Okay, so type into username, type into password is done, right? What do we want to do next? So once the username and password is done, we want to click on this button which says login, right? So I'll go here and I'll take one activity which is called click. Drag and drop the click activity. Where do you want to click? Indicate in the browser and I'll point it to this button which says login. I'll say confirm and this will actually go and do the login. Okay, now sometime what might happen that if you have something like this, right, where the username and password is already available and the robot start typing, it will start typing here, right? So I do not want the username to be continue. I want the robot to first clear whatever is there and then actually put the password, right? So that setting can be done by going to the activities, go to the properties, and here you would have something which is called empty fields. Okay, so clear the existing content of the text field before typing, right? So if I go here, you can say that how do you want to do? It's by default selected to single line. If you see for the password, modern activity has already done that setting for me, right? Empty field. In case you don't understand guys all of these settings, we have a dedicated video explaining all of these, so not spending much time here, but I hope you guys are getting familiar with how do you do a modern activity automation, right? So if I just save this, okay, and I'll close this complete browser as well. Now what is the benefit of using it in modules, right? So the one benefit is I can only run this automation, which is login acme. I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Now what would happen? It will actually go open the Edge browser, get the credential, login, and also click on the button which says login, right? If everything else works well, that means that we are good to proceed with the automation. Okay, so it has opened the Acme test UiPath website. Now it should go to the orchestrator, get me the credential, and type the credential in this place. Okay, so it has got the username, got the password, click on the login button, and automation completed, right? But the thing is, I never knew that the automation was successful or not, right? Because it automatically got closed, right? So I can go to this activity, I'll go to the properties, and now this is what the benefit of using the modern design, and this is where I want you guys to focus, right? So the browser was automatically closed, which I do not want it to happen. So I'll go here to the properties and I'll say that in the close, I never want to close it. Okay, the same automation, but this time I just change one setting. I'll go here and I'll again say run the file. Okay, so this time I am instructing it that please don't close the browser. Okay, so the automation will again start, and this time I have instructed the robot to not close the browser. Okay, so we'll just wait. Same automation. Now it should get and type the username, then it should type the password, click on the login, and now if you see, the browser was not closed, and here I can see that I am successfully logged into my account, right? Now one thing which I want you guys to do is, if you see here, right, if I go here without logout and I directly browse this URL, what happens? It does not show me the login screen, right? Because it is already logged in. So if the browser is already logged in, the screen will not come and this automation will break. That means that you have to write a logic here in this, whether to check whether you have to actually log in or not. How you can do it? You can just check for this element, right? Dashboard. Because see here, dashboard is, this text dashboard is only available when you actually log in. If you are in the home screen, you do not have that element which is called dashboard, right? Then you have the login. So you can simply write an automation or a condition here which says that once you browse this URL, and here before you get the credential, okay, I will check. What I'll check? I'll check for something which is called element exist. But now in the modern design, I am not having something which is called element exist, right? So because in the modern design you have something which is called check app state. I'll drag and drop it here. Okay, and here which element you want to wait. Okay, so I'll go here and I'll say indicate the element, and I'll point it to this button which says dashboard. Then I'll say confirm. Okay, now what do you want to do here? I want to wait for the element to appear. Okay, but for how long? The default timeout is 5 seconds. You have an option here to change it to 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. So I change it to 10 seconds. I just want to wait for 10 seconds and I want it to wait for this element to appear, right? If this element, which is dashboard, appears, well and good, that means that you are already logged in. But if you are not logged in, if that element does not appear, which is in the else part, target does not appear, that means you are not logged in, and then you have to do all of these stuffs, right? Get the password, get the email ID, right? I'll just do a like this. Okay, I'll again pass it here. I'll again pass it to this activity like this. Now this error is coming because we have moved the elements and now the variable name might be changed, right? So I'll quickly fix this. I'll go to the properties and I'll remove this. In the get credential, the other option is you can also go here and hit Ctrl+K and create the variable like this. Username, create the variable password, right? Both the ways you can do it. You can create the variables directly or you can just create the variable by yourself as well. Username, and then I'll pass here password. Okay, now once that is successfully done and which is login here, now the next thing is what do you want to do if it is already in the dashboard, right? So that means that you can always say, I'll just go here, I'll say info level log, and I can say that it is already logged in. Okay, and before doing that, I'll just copy paste this log here and I'll say that fresh login, right? So that we understand that yes, this is which part of the automation is working. Okay, so I'll save everything. I'll again go to this login Acme. I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so it has reopened the browser, but this time it was already logged in. Okay, so what has happened? If I go to the output, you would notice that it says that I was already logged in and it continued the automation. It never went to this part of the automation, right? But if I simply go here and if I log out this, right, now when you reopen and it should get you the main screen, right? So I'll go here, I'll log out this as well. I'll close this, close this. Now if I go here and I say run the file, right, this time that login screen is not there, right? It should show you the front dashboard, and if that is the front dashboard, it will go, it will type the username password and then it will click on the login button. Okay, so we have given a time of 10 seconds, so it will wait for 10 seconds. And now if you guys notice here, the username and password is already stored, right? But we have taught the robot to clean everything and then log in, right? So now as you can see, I can go to the output now and you can see that it is a fresh login, right? So that is how you can use the modern design activities to check the app state and actually log into the application. Okay, so now the login was successful. Okay, one more best practice. So this one, I can say that this is not target appear or target does not appear. You can simply say that if login is already done, right? So that you guys can understand that what automation you have written, right? So you can always change the activities name like this. Okay, so what would happen? It will go here, it will check for 10 seconds, already done, not done. You can change this number, right, by just changing it to, let's say 6, right? 6 seconds is a good enough time. Already logged in, it will simply use the same session. If it is not already logged in, it will simply go and try to get this assets, credentials and everything, right? Now think of a scenario when you try to log in. Okay, when you try to log in and somebody gave a wrong password in the assets. Now if I click on the login, the login has failed, right? But my automation is not checking whether the credential was good, not good, right? So we need to test it. So now if I have to ask you guys which part you will test it, already logged in or fresh logged in, right? So if it is already logged in, I know that yes, we are in this part which is the dashboard. So that means that yes, we are already logged in here. But in case we are not already logged in, which is the fresh login part, I get the credential, I type the username and I type the password, I click on the login, and then what? I'm not having anything, right? To check whether the login was successful, not successful, what has happened. So as a developer, you need to think of all the scenarios, and one scenario is that here the credentials are not matching. So that means that we need to raise a business exception here. How do you raise a business exception? Let's see that. So I'll go back to here, and once you click on this login button, I'll again use an activity which is called app state. This is in the modern design which is called check app state. Same activity, drag and drop it here. Okay, and then it's asking me what do you want to check. So I'll check for this guy, right, which I have highlighted. These credentials do not match our records. So I am telling UiPath to find this thing, and I'll say confirm. Okay, so if by any chance you are getting this thing, right, and the time, I'll only make it to 5 seconds, because as soon as you click on the login button, it automatically appears, right? You can make it to 3, 2, that I'll leave it to your that I'll leave it for your implementation. Okay, now element to appear or disappear. So I want to say that if this element appear within 5 seconds, if this element appear, right, if this will appear, target appear, what this means? This means that your credentials are wrong. Okay, and if this does not appear within 5 seconds, that means I can say that we are logged in. Okay, now what do you want to do if the credentials are wrong? So I can go here, I'll use an activity called throw. Okay, so throw is an activity, guys, which is used to generate a business exception. Okay, in case you don't understand what is throw, how do you raise business exception, dedicated exception handling playlist available both in Hindi and English languages. Link is available in the description, right? So throw is an activity which is used to write a business exception. So I'll open this in the advanced editor, and I'll simply write here new. This is how you write new business rule exception. Why new? Because this is a business exception we are creating on the own. And I'll mention here that now this is a custom message. Credentials are not correct. Right? You can mention any of your custom string, but this new is important. And I'll say save. So this will throw a business exception. And if everything is good, right, we are logged in. So we do not get this, we click on the login button, we are logged in. But do you guarantee that it is logged in? The answer is no, right? Because sometime what might happen that this website is taking long time to go and continue to this stuff, right? So you need to be very sure that you have successfully logged in, right? So as of now, I do not say that we are logged in here, right? I can say that the target does not appear, and I can say that I'll just use a log message activity. Okay, and in the log message activity, I'll say that I did not receive the error, right? But that does not mean that I am successfully logged in, right? So I can say that no incorrect password error, right? So no incorrect password error, I'll just log in, right? So now after this is done, we have checked the app state, it has clicked on the login button, right? If everything works well, it should go here, it will say that I am incorrect credential, and it will stop. Wherever, if everything works well, you will get this log message, right? But after this, right, am I very much sure that I am successfully logged in, right? So what I'll do is check app state dashboard, right? Here I am checking this one. This check state dashboard is for fresh login slash relogin, right? So once the automation is done with these complete step, either it will go here, either it will go here, right? Now after that, I want to validate whether the login was successful or not. And what is the criteria? Let me go here and log in. Now what is the successful criteria, right? You can use anything. You can use this welcome, you can use your email ID, which is nothing but your email ID. You can use this button. The best I can say is the dashboard, right? So once you are done with this part, here I want to do one small validation, and I'll just use the same activity which is called check state. Check app state, drag and drop it here. From both of them, I'll say that if you see this button, which is the dashboard, okay, after happening of all those stuffs, whichever is done at the top, I'll say confirm. Okay, and then if that target appears, I can simply use a log message, and now I will say that my login was successful. I'll say info, and I'll say here login successful. And if this is not appearing, that means your login was not successful. Okay, and then you should not do the other pieces of automation. Now to continue this automation, I can simply use a boolean flag here, where I say that, hey, if this element is there, just use a boolean flag is login successful, and continue to the other part of automation only when you get that flag, right? So here I have 2-3 scenarios which we have done, right? So I'll save this, I'll go back here, and this is the scenario where the browser is automatically logged in, right? So let's test this. I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so the browser was already logged in. So let's go to the logs and see output. It says that it was already logged in and the login is successful, right? Now let's go to the next scenario. I'll close this, go here, log out, right? So this is the logout scenario where the automation would be logged out, and I'll close this browser, go here and run the file. Okay, so now this is the second scenario where we are telling UiPath to go and put the user ID and the password. So now the password is already there, right? So we have instructed to clean it, so it will clean and then it will log in, right? So clean the password, re-login, clicked on the login button, then it will validate if the dashboard button is there. And if I go to the output, you can see that it is a fresh login, no incorrect password error, and the login was successful, right? Now there is a third scenario where we say that the password is incorrect, right? But we are reading the password from orchestrator assets, right? So to change it, I'll go simply to the orchestrator, go to the data manager, assets. You can click on this button which says view all assets, or you can right click on this and say view the asset. Okay, so I am signing into my orchestrator with the email ID which I am connected to. Please make sure that you connect to the correct orchestrator, and this is our orchestrator, right? Talking of the orchestrator, guys, if you are absolutely new to the orchestrator and you want to know orchestrator in detail, I have a full-fledged course which is available on Graphy. You guys can check out the course and you can learn all of these topics which you see on the screen in a step-by-step manner from the course on Graphy. I have posted the link in the description for your reference. Okay, now in the Acme credential, I am just putting wrong password 1234 and I'll say update, right? So now I have updated the password in this. Okay, and let's go here. I'll log out this. Now we are testing the third scenario where the password itself is incorrect. Okay, I'll close this and let's go here and I'll say run the file. Now what should happen? It will again reopen the acmetest.uipath.com. Correct password is there, but we have updated. So this time we are testing it for the incorrect password scenarios, right? 10-second gap we have given. You can reduce it. I think we reduce it to 6 seconds as 1234, which is an incorrect password. And then if you see here, you have got a runtime error which says throw credentials are not correct, right? Which is a business exception for you, right? And it says that this is the credential not correct. Remember, this is the message which we have given, right? So that means that all our scenarios are working fine as expected, right? If I go to the output, you can see that the login flow started, fresh login, throw the credential was not correct, right? Now you can simply use a boolean flag here, print it like that, okay, the credentials are not correct, send an email, stop the workflow, right? Once you are inside the Acme test website, the next thing which we have to do is we have to go to vendors, and then we have to click on this button which says vendor inventory. Okay, so this is the one way of going to the vendor inventory, when you click on the vendor and then you go to the vendor inventory. However, if you notice here the URL says acmetest.com/vendor/inventory, right? So whenever you are working as an RPA developer on any automation, you should always think, can I reduce the number of steps? And one thing which I can see here is that you can always, if I just do a Control C and I open a new tab, I'll paste this here and I hit enter, right? It's directly taking me to the page. So that way I do not have to every time go to the vendor and then click on the vendor inventory. I can directly browse this URL to come to this page, right? And once you are on this page, the second thing which you have to do is you have to get all these elements from this drop down, right? So for me, I can see that I have only 5 elements. For you it might be different, right? Because it is different as per the different user. Okay, so the next item for us is to get all these details from this drop down. Okay, so back to the UiPath Studio, I'll go here and I'll say new sequence. Okay, I'll call this sequence as get all vendors from that list. Okay, get all vendors from that list. I'll go here and I'll simply hit create. Okay, so once you have created this, okay, now just now we have seen that I can directly attach the browser. So I'll go here and I'll say use application/browser, and I'll point it to my application which is already open, right? So as you can see, this is the URL which is directly mentioned here, right? Now best practice, you should always make this thing in the part of config or in the assets, so that in future if you want all this URL changes, you can directly go and update this here. Okay, so now you have this browse for URL which is available here, right? What is the next thing? The next thing is we want to get all these vendors one by one, and then we have to click on check inventory, right? But before I click on check inventory, first I need to get all these vendors, right? So what I'll do is I'll go here and I'll take something which is called find children. Okay, so find children is an activity under UI automation which would give you all these elements from the drop down in a different format. What does this mean? I'll quickly go and I say indicate on screen. Okay, and I will point it to this drop down, right? So find children is going to get me all the selectors, all the UI elements from this drop down. Okay, and you can see find children has got this, right? If I go to the properties, I'll just go here, I'll leave everything to the default setting, and in the children's I'll hit Ctrl+K and I'll create a new variable called children's. Okay, now let us try to analyze what exactly we get in the children's and what is the value which I am interested in. Okay, so I'll go here, I will put an write line activity, drag and drop it here. Okay, I'll put a breakpoint and I would say debug the file. Okay, I simply want to see how does the automation behave when I say find the children and what is the output I am getting in that variable. Okay, accordingly I would be able to take the next set of steps. The agenda here is to get all these values from the drop down. Okay, so the automation has started. This is again a different benefit of writing the automation in modules. You do not have to run the entire automations, right? If you see in the elements, I have this complete element which is available here. I click on this pencil icon and this is what you are getting in that children. So I'll just do a Control A, Control C. Okay, let us take it to an application called Notepad++, where we can actually analyze this thing. Okay, so I'll open my Notepad++. I'll paste this. This is the actual output, and let me just change the language to XML. Okay, so now this is the output of what we got from the find children. Okay, so this is the output from the output variable, which is the find element. Okay, now if you notice this carefully, this is a collection of 5 UI elements, right? And to divide it into 5 individual pieces, let me just go here and I search for the UI element, right? So if I just click here, so you would notice that this is one UI element. Okay, this is the second UI element, which is here. This is the third UI element. This is the fourth UI element, and then lastly this is the fifth UI element, which is this guy, right? Now all of these are individual UI elements, and UiPath is iterating all of this into the find children. Now inside this UI element you have something which is called the selector, and in the selector you have something which is the AA name, which is having the value we are interested in, right? See, AA name is equal to FR, AA name is equal to ITI, AA name is equal to R0, and the AA name is equal to RU, right? So now what we have to do is we have to iterate all of these UI elements one by one, and we have to get this attribute which is called the AA name, right? So I'll go back to my UiPath Studio, and from the UiPath Studio, once you have got all these children, this is in a variable called children's, right? After that I will use a for each activity because we want to loop, right? So I'll go here and I'll say for each. I'll drag and drop the for each here, and I'll say that for each elements in what? The children's, right? This is where all these elements are iterating, right? This is where UiPath storing all these elements, right? Now from here I want to get the value of the AA name. How do you get it? We have an activity which is called get attribute. Okay, so in case you are new to concepts of find children and using all of these activities, I have made dedicated videos where I am explaining all these properties in a step-by-step manner. I have put all these video links in the description for your reference, right? So please do refer in case you don't understand how does these activities work, right? But to quickly tell you, in case you want to get any attribute out of this, like this iteration, you have an activity which is called get attribute, because I want to get the attributes. Okay, so then inside the attribute you have something which is called get the attribute. Okay, now this get attribute is an activity where you can get attribute. You can get it from the selector, you can get it from the element, you can get it from the clipping region, right? So I am iterating a list of, if I go to the variable, see, this children is a list of UI elements, right? So that means this current item would be a UI element. So I'll go to the get attribute, I'll go to the properties, and I'll mention that I want to get it from the UI element, and here I am going to pass current item. Now from this current item, which means one item, second item, third item, fourth item, what do you want to get? I want to get this value which is AA name, right? So I'll copy this AA name, go back to the automation, and I'll pass this attribute here in double quotes. And that's it, right? Now I should get the AA name. Now where should you store it? So I'll hit Ctrl+K and I'll create a variable. I'll call this as vendor code maybe, right? So then I should get the vendor code, right? Now to quickly validate it, I'll just use an activity which is called write line. drag and drop it here, and I'll instruct UiPath to just print the vendor code, right? So this is working in loop. So the expectation is in the output I should get all the AE names one by one. Okay, so I'll go here and I'll simply say run the file. Okay, so this is our portal. So the robot should go get all these data and print it back in the output using this activity, which is the write line. Okay, so if I go to the output, you can see that I have got all the items DEFR 1 2 3 4 5 ending with RU. If I go to the portal, the same items are available here. Okay, so that means that now I can write an automation where I can instruct the robot to go and get all these details one by one. Okay, so that was about getting all the list of the vendors, right? So I have got all the list of the vendors from here. Okay, so this part is also done. Okay, so now what is the next thing? The next thing is we have to go to each and every vendor and click on this button, which is check the inventory. Okay, we have to get all this information and do the calculations, right? So that would be the next part of the automation. Now one interesting thing here is that as soon as you change this check inventory, right, see the URL vendor/inventory/ this thing. Okay, if I change it to something like RU and I say check inventory, it is changing, right? So now you have two ways. For each of these items, you can instruct the robot to come here, select this item, click on this check inventory, or you can directly hit this URL where you till this part up to inventory, it is exactly the fix, right? The only thing which is changing is this guy, right? So if I write an automation where I can tell UiPath that for each and every item which you have got in that list, you simply go and pass it in the URL and then do the next set of operations, right? That would be good, right? So what I'll do is I'll go back to my UiPath Studio. Always write automation in pieces, right? So it's easy for you to test it, run it, and then at the last we are going to combine all of it together, right? So I'll go here, I'll create a new sequence. I'll call this extract the data and perform the sum or the calculation, right? Let's call it perform the calculation. I'll go here and I'll say create extract, right? Extract data and perform the calculations, right? Now two parts are already done. We have got all these details. Now what we have to do is we have to extract this information and do the calculations, right? Now just now we have discovered that if I just use this URL, I was able to get this thing without directly going it one by one, right? So what I'll do is I'll go back to my UiPath Studio and we have an activity which is called navigate to, right? Which is an activity inside the UI automation browser, which is navigate to. Okay, now this navigate to is asking me, tell me Mukesh, where is your URL, right? So I'll instruct UiPath to go to this URL. Okay, so this activity will go and it will go to that URL and it will get the data. Okay, so once it is done, it will go to the URL, right? But if you see here, this part should be dynamic, right? So I'll go to the arguments, okay, and I'll create an input argument and I'll call this as vendor code, okay, and I'll just hard code this for a while, but when we are running it end to end, we will go and we'll simply change this, right? So I am telling UiPath that go to this URL, instead of this put whatever you get in the vendor code, and this vendor code we are going to get from the other XAMLs, right? So when working as an RPA developer, you have to think the automation as the complete solution. Okay, so I navigated to this URL, so the robot would come and take me to this position, right? What is the next thing I want to do? I want to extract all this information. Okay, so I'll go back to my UiPath Studio. On the top I have this button which is scraping. I'll select the table extraction, right, because I want to extract the information. Select the data to extract, point it to any one of the element. Would you like to extract all the columns? I say yes. Okay, it has given me that I have got all the data. Do you want to extract multiple pages? We are not having multiple pages, so I'll say save and close. Okay, and automatically UiPath has written the automation to extract the information. Now if you see here something which is hard coded, which is again the number, right, because we did a table extraction, so UiPath hard coded this thing, but I have already this in the vendor code, so I'll go here and I'll update this thing also with the vendor code, right? So I'll go open this and I'll ask UiPath that no need to hard code this. Okay, just use the vendor code whichever we are providing. Okay, so once this information is extracted, what is the next thing you have to do, right? So there were two objectives. The first objective was to get it into an Excel sheet, and the second objective was to do the calculation, right? Let's do the first one, where I am instructing UiPath that you write this data into an Excel. So to write the data, use an activity which is called write range workbook. Okay, so this is to write the data. Now where do you want to write the data? This is the path. So I can say that this is the final data. You can name it anything, and as of now I'm not giving any path, so this would be created in the project folder. Okay, what should be the sheet name? So if you remember the requirement, the sheet name should be the vendor code, right, which is nothing but your input argument. And then what is the data you want to extract? I want to extract this information, extract data table. So I'll go here, extract data table. Okay, now if I run this automation, what should happen? The robot should go to this URL for the first vendor code and it should give me that data in an Excel sheet. Okay, I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, it's always good to test your automation as you are writing, right? That way you are very sure that when you change the value, you can make sure that yes, it is working perfectly. Okay, as you can see that the navigate to activity didn't work. It says that you should use this activity inside a browser scope, or you should set it, right? So it's saying me that Mukesh, we are not able to navigate to this property because you never told us that where is this activity. And one more thing here which I did a mistake as of now is that I am trying to use a combination of modern plus classic at the same time. So if you see here, this automation is built in this activity is a modern design activity, and navigate to is an activity which is a classic design, right? So one thing which I would like to suggest you guys, that whenever you are writing automation, don't do such mistake. Either you stick to classic or you stick to modern. That way it would be very easy for you, right? So the mistake which I have done is I am telling UiPath that hey, you need to use this classic activity and it requires an attached browser, right? However, the same equivalent of this activity is something called go to URL. It's something called URL. Yeah, go to URL. See, for the browser you have something which is called go to URL. So I can say that instead of this navigate to, I want to use this activity which is go to URL, the modern activity, and I'll delete this. But now this activity is saying that Mukesh, I am only and only working if I am inside an attached browser. Okay, so this activity works only with attached browser. Now if I ask you guys what was the previous screen, right? So the previous screen was this, right? Every time the robot will get the vendors, it would be on this screen. So from this screen we have to navigate to this screen, right? So I'll just go to the activities. I'll use an activity called use application/browser at the top. Why I am doing this? Because previously I have used an activity called go to URL which was not working, and now I wanted to use a modern activity. And as we have seen in the modern design experiences, modern activity cannot work without the scope, right? So first I am providing scope. So what is the scope? Indicate and just point it to this guy, right? Because if you remember previously, when you get all these vendors, it would be in that screen. And now I am telling it that you go and you go to this URL. Once you are in this URL, then you attach the browser and then you do the next set of automations. Okay, I'll do a save. I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully it should work. I'm not sure, right? So we are going to explore it together. Okay, so first screen. Now it should navigate to the browser. Okay, it navigated to the browser. It closed the browser, and then it should have actually gone to this and then extract the information. Okay, so the automation is completed. Let us go to the project folder, and as you can see that I have got an Excel with all these data into the Excel along with the sheet name, right? Which means that my automation is working for this value, which was the DE, right? But how do I know whether it will work for the other guys as well? So let me do a quick one more test where I'll say that I'll copy this, and now since this is a reusable kind of code, I can just go to the arguments and I say that go to this guy ITI, right? I'll save this. And since I'm using a workbook activity, I need to close the Excel. Okay, I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so what we are doing basically is we are testing our automation for a different value, right? I want to be very sure that whatever I do should work for all the different items. Okay, so the robot started, executed. Okay, let's go back to the file. As you can see, this was the first, and now I have got it for the ITI 45672 as well. Okay, why we are not getting the headers? Because in the right range activity, in the properties, we have not told it to include the headers. I'll include this, and next time it should get the headers as well. Okay, so first requirement is completed where we are going to this and we are getting the data. Okay, so this part is done. Now what is the next thing? The next part of the requirement was to do the calculation where I say quantity multiply by cost, this multiply by this multiply by this, and we have to add data in the final sheet, right? So till this point, before writing the data, you have the extracted data in a data table which is called extract data table. Okay, so now to calculate the sum, you can always use anything, right? You can just write a for each loop for each data in the extract data table, multiply this by this, store it in a number, and then do the sum. However, an easy and efficient way is to write LINQ, which is also known as language integrated query. Let's try to write a LINQ, and I'll try to make you explain, guys, how does that thing work. Okay, so before writing the LINQ, if you see here, I do not have the headers because I forgot to click on the headers, right? So I'll just delete this. Okay, and I'll just go here and I'll rerun this automation, right? So I'll just go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so I'm rerunning the automation so that I could get the headers, because when we are writing the LINQ, we would actually require the name of the headers, right? So previously I was not getting the headers because I have not clicked on that button which was add headers, but now I have clicked it and I am running it for this one which is IT, right? So for IT, now if I go to the Excel, okay, so what I just did is for the IT, yeah, I have got now the headers, right? So now one part of the requirement was to write the data back to the Excel, which I have done. The other thing is we have to multiply this and this and this, and then we have to do the calculation. So as a human, how do you do it, right? So the first thing is, if you notice here, this thing is coming as text. See, it says that it is a number which is stored as text. right? So as a human, what do you do? So as a human, first thing I do is I convert this thing to a number. That means that it can be now divided multiplication and we can do the arithmetic operations, right? Once these are converted to numbers, then I am actually multiplying this and this, right? So this is as a human we do the multiplication, then for all this multiplication, and then at the end I do the sum. So this is the same thing we have to do with the help of LINQ, where we have to multiply this, and then at the end we have to do the sum. Okay, so notice here that we have this column name which is quantity, and this is the column name whose name is cost/unit. So these are the two things which I just did. The same thing we are going to do with the help of UiPath as well. Okay, going back to my automation. So once you have extracted the data, you have written the data to the Excel sheet. Okay, you have written the data where? You have written the data to the Excel sheet, the complete thing. I am going to use an activity which is called assign. Okay, and here I am directly going to do the sum. So I'll hit Ctrl+K and I'll say that this is the sum. Now the sum cannot be a string, it cannot be an integer, right? Because somewhere we have also seen that we have the decimal values as well. So I'll go to here, browse for data types. Okay, and I'll change it to double, this guy. Okay, and now if I see here, this is a double. Okay, now what is the LINQ which we are going to write? So I'll go here, I'll expand this, and this is the LINQ. Okay, so let me try to explain that. Okay, so extract data table is the data table which we have. Dot as enumerable, which means that I am trying to tell UiPath that I want to do it for all the items which is in the loop. So I want to do it for each and every item, which is meaning as enumerable, right? Now what do you want to do? I want to do the calculation. So I have used a function which is called dot sum, right? So dot sum is a function. So that's why it says that dot sum. Now UiPath is asking me, what do you want to sum? So I say that just sum up all the rows. Okay, which is nothing but a data row. Okay, for this data table, data row. Now there are two things which we need to do. First, sometime what might happen that if you go here and if I write here ABCD. Okay, now if I go here and I try to do this as a number, it won't be able to do the number. And if you see here, we have got an error, right? You got something unexpected error. Ideally this is not correct. If this value is not correct, you should get a 0 here, right? That okay, you are not able to do something, let me give you a 0. And this number while multiplication should be treated as a 0, right? So that way you would be able to handle the error. The same thing which I have done here. Okay, I'll just expand it. This is the same thing which I have done here. I am saying that if, okay, double dot try parse. Double dot try parse means try to convert this value. Now it is asking me which value? From the row, the quantity. See, from the row, the quantity, which is this guy. So from the row, get the quantity dot toString. This will give you the first row. Convert it to double. If you are able to convert it to double, well and good. If you are not able to convert, put a 0. Okay, as simple as that. And also try to do the same thing with the next column, which is cost/unit. So if I go here, cost/unit. If you find anything here which you are not able to convert to double, make it to 0, right? So these two statements in the LINQ are taking care of that thing. Okay, so I hope this is also clear. Once you have got the proper number, or it can be 0, you have to simply make the multiplication. So I'll say that take the quantity, multiply it by the cost and unit, right? And then if you are not able to do the calculation, give me the final number as 0. This is the LINQ for this statement. Okay, so once you save it, it should look something like this. Okay, so I was showing you everything in a separate line, but ideally for UiPath it has to be in a single line like this, right? But to make you understand, I have put it in enter. Once you understand it and you have written it, just put everything in a single line like this. Okay, so that way what would happen is it will do the calculation and it will print the sum, and it will give you that sum in this variable which is called the sum. Okay, so now before I continue, I just want to add a log message activity. Drag and drop it here. Now in the log message activity, I'll say that this is the sum, right? So I'll just say sum for which vendor. So I'll say sum for vendor. Where is the vendor? That's an input argument for us, right? Vendor code. And then I say that the sum is the sum dot toString, because we are trying to print it in the log. Okay, so now if everything is good, it should go and it should evaluate the calculation for this guy, which is ITI, and then it should tell us that what is the total. Okay, I'll say don't save. Let's go here and I say run the file. Okay, so we have just written and LINQ to cut short the code, right? You guys are free to do it with the help of for each, run through the loop, do the calculation, and then do the sum, right? You always can do it, but it is good to have a short and precise code. Okay, so this is done. Let's go to the output, and I can see that it shows me that the sum for vendor ITI is 4803908 something. Okay, you don't have to trust. So let's go to the Excel. Okay, so this was the ITI thing, right, which we just did. I'll quickly do the calculation, guys. So here in Excel, first of all, I'll convert all of these to number, and then I'll say equal to multiply this, put a multiplication sign, this, hit enter, you got this number, do it for all these values, and then do the sum, which is the auto sum, and you have got a number which is like this. Okay, so let me see what is the number. It says 4803908.52. So I go to the vendor solution, go to the output, right, 48098.52. okay, exactly the same value which I am getting in the Excel, right? So that means that our automation is able to complete and get the total as well. Okay, now the other thing is we have to also write this in here, right? In a new sheet we have to write that, okay, this is the sum, this is the total, this is the sum, this is the total, right? So basically we have to write this data at the end. We have to keep appending this data in the Excel as well, right? Now to write this sum back to the Excel, there can be multiple ways, right? But I do not want to write the sum every time, right? Rather, I would like to write the total in the end. Once all these vendors are evaluated, I just want to keep accommodating this complete value and write it at the end, right? What do I mean by that? Okay, so I'll go here, and in here I would create a data table, right? I'll call it as in underscore data table underscore final for sum, right? So I am telling UiPath that, hey, you will get a data table. Okay, so I'll convert it to data table. I'll make it to in out, right? Now why in out? Because I want to read and write the data at the same time, right? So that's why, guys, it is important for you to know the basics, right? So the basics of the arguments is that if I make a variable in out, I am instructing UiPath to read the data table as well as write the data back as well. Okay, so I have a data table now which is called dt underscore final sum, and in UiPath you have an activity which is called add data row. Okay, so add data row is an activity where you can write a data row directly to a data table. So what is my data table? So I am telling UiPath that this is my final data table, which is called dt underscore final sum, and you just assign an array row to the data. Now how do you assign an array row? It's absolutely simple, right? What do you want to write in the data table? So I'll just expand it for you guys. Okay, so I want to write the vendor code, which is in vendor code, right? And then I also want to write the sum, which is in your sum variable, right? And I'll make it dot toString like this. Okay, so once this is run successfully, what would happen? Okay, let's see it from the beginning. The robot will go to the inventory, it will get to the data, extract the information, put the data into the extraction in the Excel sheet, evaluate the sum, and at the same time the sum will be added to a data table, which is kind of a temporary data table which we have created, and it will keep accommodating the sum to this data table. Okay, so this completes our automation. Now what do you have to do? Now all we have to do is just merge all of this code together so that we can run it as a full-fledged automation. Okay, so I'll go here and I'll create a new sequence. Okay, I'll call this sequence as merge underscore all underscore code. You can do it in the main sequence as well, but I have some random stuff in the mail, so I'm writing a new sequence, right? Merge all the code. Okay, so now how do you merge all the code? That's why we have written all these XAMLs individually, right? So the first XAML which we wanted to use was the login, right? So I'll go to the project folder, Acme login, right? So this is the same XAML, guys, where we have written the code to login, right? So the Acme login will have all the code to login. Once the login is successful, what do you want to do, right? After the login, we have to get all the vendors. So this is our code, which is get all vendor list. Drag and drop it here. This will get us all the vendor code, right? If you see this is the same workflow where we are writing all these vendor codes one by one, right? But if you see here we are just writing this vendor code one by one in the right line. And now after this, there is a new XAML, right? So if I go back to the merge, right? So here, once you get all this code, the third step was to extract the data and perform the calculations, right? But now if you see here, this guy is asking me, Mukesh, where is my vendor code? I cannot run it hard coded every time, right? So this XAML should give all the items to this guy. Let's fix that, right? So I'll go to this guy, which is get all vendors. Okay, instead of this right line where you are writing all these two one by one here, right, like this, you are writing all by one to the right line, I'll simply go here and I'll use an activity called add to collection. Okay, and minimize this. Okay, and here in the argument I would create an out underscore list of vendors. I'll make it to out, and I would say that this is nothing but a list of vendors. So the output from the second XAML would be, so just go here and write it like this, system.collection.generic, and this would be a list of string, right? That's why, guys, it is always important to have the basics of programming, right? So I have a list of string which would be an output argument, and I am asking UiPath add to the collection. Go to the properties, and here where is the collection? So the collection is the out list of vendors. Okay, and what is the item you want to add? The item which I want to add is the vendor code. And that's it, right? Still I am getting some error here. Let's quickly check what is that. Okay, it says that I'm not able to add the object because this is a string. and it's gone. Okay, now one thing, whenever you are working with collection, it is important to initialize the collections, right? But since I have directly created this collection which is here, I cannot initialize it, right? So a good practice, again, go to the variables, okay, create a new list. I would say that list of vendors. Okay, the same thing, list of string, and initialize it. Okay, it is always good to initialize. So I will say here new, because I do not want to get into the null reference exceptions. So I written here new list of string. Now this list of vendors, I'll say that when you are adding to the collection, don't directly add it to the output argument, add it to the variable list, which is this one, list of vendors. Same thing, right? So what would happen? It will keep add all of this one by one to the list of vendors, and after the for each, once everything is done, I'll just use an assign activity, and here I would say that whatever you have got in the list of vendors, just assign it to the output argument, right? Why I have done so? Because output argument we cannot initialize, right? And if you don't initialize, you might get a null reference exception. Once that is done, I'll simply go here and I'll put an activity which is called a log message activity, and this log message activity, I'll simply print how many counts I have, right? So I'll say that count of vendors, and I'll call this as list. Whatever you have in the out argument, I want to print it, out list of vendors dot count dot toString, so that I know that how many items I have got in the list. That's it, right? And one more thing, I saw here that I was using a write line. That's not a good practice. That's only for the debugging purpose. Okay, if you want to see it in orchestrator, you use this one which is called log message activity. Okay, and I'll just print this guy which is the vendor code. Okay, so this thing is done, and now once this automation is running, I should get all these list of vendors, okay, from this screen, right? Before continuing, I would like to test this, because that's what the good practice says, that we should test it, right? And all these log message activity would be printing that what has happened, and if I get a count of 5, that means that my automation is working properly. Okay, run the file. So what would happen? This is the same code. Previously it was just printing all the vendor code one by one, but now I have added all of that to a list, right? So as of now, once I done this, if I go to the output, see, I'm getting all this and I'm getting a count of vendor 5. So this count of vendor, I have printed the out argument. So the out argument I am printing here, that means that the 5 elements are added to the queue. Okay, so now I go back to the merge all code. I click on this button and it is giving me list of the vendors, which is all the 5 items, right? So I'll go here, hit Ctrl+K, and I'll say that these are the list of vendors. Okay, list of vendors are available here for you. Now what you have to do, now this guy is asking me where are the list of vendors. It's hard coded, right? So, and all the list of vendors are here, all the 5 items are here, right? Now I have to pass it one by one. So I'll just go here and I'll use an activity called for each. Okay, drag and drop it here, and I say that where is the list of items? What do you want to iterate? I want to iterate the list of vendors, and all these list of vendors, in the current item you will get all the vendors one by one, and in the import argument, don't want to hard code, just put the current item, which is nothing but your vendor code from here. So what would happen? This guy will give you all the 5 vendors name one by one, and here you are going to pass all the vendors item one by one to this, right? But you open the workflow here. Here we have written a code where you have to write this data to a data table. Okay, so while I am merging all the code, this guy is asking me that, hey, I have a data table which you have to pass me, right? Where is the data table? Because we have to consolidate the sum also, right? So at the beginning, maybe here or anywhere, right, you can use an activity which is called build data table. Okay, I'm creating a build data table, temporary data table. What do you want to call this data table? Okay, so I will remove this column. I'll call this first column as, what do you want to write it in the table, right? So I want to call it as let's say vendor name, right? That is what we want to write. This would be a string, and the other would be, I think, the total. Maybe we'll just write as total, and this also I'll call it as sum string, and I'll say okay. Okay, so this will create a blank data table for me, and this data table will be populated by each and every vendor. Okay, so I'll go to here and I'll go to the properties. I'll call this as dt underscore final data table, final dt for sum. Okay, so this data table will be created, right? Again, a good practice, go to the variables and initialize the data table, right? So I'll say that new system dot data table. Okay, so that's done, and now all you have to do is just pass this data table to this guy here in the input arguments, and I would just say that this is your data table dt final dt sum. Okay, so now what would happen? This same data table would go as an input argument to this guy. Here it will do that calculation, add it back to the data table. Once everything is done, we just have to write the data table back to the Excel sheet row. I'll go here and use an activity called write range, right? It is important, guys, to put the activity in the right place, right? Because if I put it inside the for which, it will keep writing after each and every iteration. I don't want to do that, right? So what is the name of the Excel which you want to write it? I think we put it here, right? So let's use the same Excel. I forgot the name. Yeah, final data dot xlsx, right? It can be a path. So I hope this thing you understand that we should not hard code, but because I want to store it directly here, so I'm using it. What should we call the final? So I can say that this would be the consolidated, and now it is asking me what is the data table. So my data table would be dt underscore final dt sum, and don't forget to use the add headers. Okay, I'll save this, and if I go to the project, I already have this one which is the final data. I'll delete this sheet. Okay, it's already open here. I'll close this. I'll say don't save. Yeah, the sheet is deleted now. Okay, now if I run this automation, what should happen? First it will log in, build our temporary data table, get all the list of vendors, iterate through it, do the calculation and write the calculation back to the Excel along with the data. Okay, so I'll leave it to here. Let me go back to the Acme test once again. Okay, so it's already logged out. Anyways, we have handled it. So let's run it fresh. So I'll go to the merge all code. I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, because if I select the run, it will start from the main where we don't have the main code, right? Okay, so let's wait and see how does this automation behave. There are something which definitely needs to be taken care in this automation, which I'll explain. Okay, so it has came to the website acmetest.uipath.com. It will get the credential, put in the details. right? Click on the login. Then we have instructed directly go to the URL, extract all this information, and now it would be evaluating the sum and changing the value. See the URL, it's not clicking on check inventory guys, it is directly hitting the URL, extracting the information, putting the total in the temporary data table, and at the end it should write it back. Okay, I think this completed. Let's go to the output, and you can see that this is all the data. I'll just toggle off this one. Okay, so vendor solution started, all these vendors we have got, the count of vendors was 5, for this was the total, and for all this it evaluated the total, right? It took me 39 seconds. Let's go to the project. I'll hit a quick refresh. Yeah, final data is created. Let's open it. Okay, looks good, right? As you can see that I have got this data here, FR, IT, R0, this guy, and the final sheet, we call it consolidated, where you have the vendor name as well as the total, right? So this was our objective which we have to do, right? So this complete the actual implementation, but there are two things which are still remaining from a best practice point of view. In the merged all code, once it has written successfully, right, we have to simply go here and close this browser. However, because of some issues, we do not see the logout button here, which ideally should be here. So what we can do is we can simply come here and we can close this tab, right? So I'll go here and I'll simply use an activity called use application / browser. Okay, once everything is done, right? So this is the code basically to close all the applications. I'll point it to this button where it would be, and here then I can simply use an click activity. You can use a close tab activity, right? That I'll leave to your implementations. Okay, this is the classic click. Okay, and I'll point it to, let's say, this button. Okay, and I'll say confirm. Okay, and that should close the browser once everything is done. Okay, now there are some exception handling things for this login which we have already done. With the get vendor from the list, I'll just say open the workflow. Okay, and here you can do it at very different levels, right? We have already seen that in the exception handling playlist. In case not, please do watch the exception handling playlist guys. And then I'll say that there is some exception, so I'll go here and I'll put an activity called log message, drag and drop it here. I'll say this is an error, and I'll say we got error in getting all the vendors, right? So you don't get the unexpected errors. Okay, so this is also done, and while doing this you can do it at individual level where you say that, hey, I got some exception doing this, or I got some exception while navigating, entirely leaving you for your implementation. But it's important at least to have a high level exception handling, which I'm doing here. Okay, so I'll go here and I'll say exception, and then the same thing, I'll put a log message activity, and I'll say this is an error. Okay, and I'll say here exception in calculations maybe. Okay, and this will give me the error, and I'll just write plus and plus exception.toString, right? This will give you the complete exception object. Save this. Okay, so this now completes the automation. Okay, so this is this. If I go back to the home, I think if I just go back, then also it is there. Ideally we should have a logout button, which is not here, which is there in the different screen, but it is not coming. But anyways, right? So I'll close this, I'll go here and I'll say run the file. Okay, so two things we have done. We have implemented the exception handling, and we have also done the soft close, I would say, right? And again, the same thing guys, you can also use the other best practices, which is like closing of the edge application if it is already open, right? All the concepts of RE framework, best practices, lot of things you can do, but this was the core concepts of this challenge. Okay, so we'll just wait for this final run, because we want to see, right, that we should not have done anything wrong and it impacts the other functionalities, right? So as you can see, we are using that navigate to URL to go to the different pages, right? So FR we total have 5, so you might have different with your solution, right? So we'll just wait for this to complete. And now if you notice, once this was completed successfully, the browser was automatically closed by UiPath as well. The bot is still working, probably writing the data back to the Excel, which is the final consolidated sheet, and then it should simply go and close the automations. Okay, so in the output, as we can see that it was completed successfully. Okay, so that was the step-by-step demonstration of the problem statement which we have discussed this week. If I talk about the submissions, we have received pretty good amount of submission. Thank you so much for submitting. One solution which I want to share with you guys is this one, which is submitted by Matthews, and he has built this problem statement in a robotics enterprise framework. Right, so RE framework, or I would say robotics enterprise framework, is meant to for built-in transactional processing. However, you can manipulate the RE framework and you can utilize it for linear process with data tables, anything, right? In case you are not sure that how you can manipulate RE framework with a data table, how do you manipulate RE framework for linear process, I have these 2 dedicated videos where we have converted this framework and we have seen how to utilize it, right? So Matthews has done this complete problem statement in RE framework. You can see it's very clear, very neat, right? If you go by the starting, the best practices, project name is here, who has developed it, and all the other details regarding the automations are available at the top. Okay, if I open the initialization, here also, this is the plain robotics enterprise framework where most of the things are configured. We are using the config file, we are using the logs, right? We are using the kill all process to clean the environment, right? And here also you can see we have all these are default RE framework. In the init all applications, if I just open this workflow, okay, you would see that it says opening the application, the URL is again stored in the config file. We are checking whether it's activated or not. If it is not activated, this is the complete login flow, right? As you can see, most of the details we are getting from orchestrator, logging into the application, using modern design activities properly renamed, right? And also exception handling is also done for the init all application, right? By the way, it's already done by RE framework for us, right? Now if I continue going to this guy, which is the process transaction, right? Now if I talk about the process.xaml, this is where Matthews has written the complete code. Okay, so this is a XAML. As we can see, get the vendor data.xaml. I'll say open the workflow, right? In my solution, I was using an activity called find children, and then we get that. However, Matthews is using an activity which is from modern design, which is a get attribute activity, right? You can use the get attribute activity, select the items, and you will directly get the vendor names, right? Same like I was storing the data in a data table and I was keep adding the value. Here in this solution, we are using something which is called a data set. Now a data set is a collection of data tables, right? So what we are doing here is we are getting all these vendors one by one in the vendor name. For each vendor, we are going to the URL, right? Navigate to the URL, right? The same concept. See, acme URL / and the vendor name, the same we did. Then we are going to the URL, extracting the data. Once the data is extracting, we are adding the data to the data set. Okay, we are not writing, in my solution I was writing it directly to the Excel. However, this solution is adding the complete data table to the data set. Okay, now this process will repeat for all the vendors. Once you have all the vendors, then this is the solution. This is a code which is actually calculating the total from the data sets, right? So we created a new data table for each of the data tables. See, for each vendor data table, get the data, do the calculations, right? This is the calculation. I hope you guys now understand it, right? Just total the vendor, convert it to double, do the calculation, add it back to the final data table, and then again add it back to the actual data set. Once you have everything, you just write a logic to put all these data set into the individual Excel sheet with this one, which is save vendor data.xaml. If I open this workflow, here we are just using the Excel file for each in the vendor table, and we are just writing back it to the database. And we are just writing back it to the Excel sheet, right? Now what are the good things here? The good things here is that we are using data set. I am not individually writing the Excel sheet, right? The other thing is it is built in RE framework, highly configurable. All the logs, everything is taken care by RE framework. It is using the exception handling, as you can see, try, catch, business exceptions, system exceptions, everything is handled in this solution, right? So this is one solution which I wanted to share. So I hope you also like this solution. In case you want to explore this solution, I will upload the solution to the same place where we have uploaded the other solution. You just have to go to this website, mukeshkala.com. Go to the challenges, and here you can see that we have data for the first two challenges, 1 and 2. Similarly, for this third challenge also you will get the data, and you could download the solution, my solution, and you can refer yourself as well, right? Okay, so these are the two solutions which I wanted to share today. I hope you have found this insightful, and I would appreciate your feedback on these videos. That did you learn something new about anything today? How do you like the solution? Or if you have a better way of solving this problem statement, let me know in the comments. I would be happy to amplify your solution as well. Okay, I'll wait for your comments. And thank you for watching this. We are going to announce the winner for this challenge on Monday, and at the same time we are going to announce the next challenge for the week, right? Okay, so that is all for this video. I would like to wrap this video here. I hope this was insightful. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to write me in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well. I would appreciate your feedback on the video, and tell me in the comments what would be the next topic or next video you want to see. So with that, I would wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.